Tom, are you okay?
I lost her.
Her?
She was going to be this epic, trilogy-worthy character. I was going to be the hottest writer in Hollywood. But I can't get past Act 1!
You need some writers group therapy. Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. And if you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe, share it with your friends, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us online at writersgrouptherapy.com and also on Twitter and Instagram at WGTherapy individually.
I'm Tom_Loveman on Twitter and Tom Loveman on Instagram.
And I am at Moonlily Music on Instagram and at Roshni Lamino on Twitter. So we've had a lot of time to binge everything and rewatch everything.
Yeah. Not all good.
Not all good. Not all good. You know, okay, I do have to say, and I think this is maybe what made me think of today's topic. Okay, so they have the Tiger King series, and then they did like the Tiger King follow-up with Joel McHale, and now they're doing Tiger King, the fictionalized version with Nicolas Cage. And you have to ask yourself, when is enough? You know?
I didn't know they were doing another version, a dramatized version. Wow.
You didn't know? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm actually one of the few people who haven't watched it. I think I watched like 5 minutes of it and I turned it off, and then that was it.
It's a train wreck that you just have to keep watching. It's
That's
so
what I
bizarre.
hear.
It's so
Yeah.
bizarre. But it does make you wonder because you think, why do you need another sequel? Why do you need another follow-up? What about, should you write a trilogy? Should you write a whole series of something? When are you done with that story? And should you ever revisit it?
Yeah. It's funny you said train wreck because it just popped into my head. Snowpiercer is coming out on streaming as a series, and that was a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was a Korean movie that had a long, long road through production and finally getting released here. It starred Chris Evans actually, and it was pretty. I loved it. I thought it was great. But now they're doing it as a series, and I think that's one of the reasons we see a lot of IPs continuing to go and go is because they haven't done it on all the different platforms yet. So you had the theatrical version, you have the streaming version, you have the TV series version. As long as they think there's still a place to elaborate on it, to show it to people who haven't seen it yet, they're willing to do it because it's still prime content that they haven't done yet.
But to be fair, Snowpiercer is originally a comic, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is interesting, because a lot of adaptations such as Snowpiercer or Walking Dead or His Dark Materials, now I know Walking Dead was never a movie, but the other ones were movies and they don't quite work as movies. Like they kind of do,
Right.
but not really. But when I watched His Dark Materials as a TV show, I'm like, they should have just done this in the first place. It makes sense. So Snowpiercer as a TV show makes sense to me because then they can elaborate and you don't mind sitting there for 5 hours versus 2.
Yeah, it felt like the story wasn't fleshed out as well in the movie. I mean, it was exciting and you get the basic gist of it, but it was kind of like mysterious. Like you never really understood the underworkings of the civilization that was living on a train. So they'll be able to work that out a lot more detailed in the series.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think? I'm all about standalones. I hate, like, as a reader, as a avid book reader, I cringe when I see a series. I will not start a series if it's more than 3 or 4 books in because I just don't have the time to sit there and be like, "Oh, let me read 17 novels." And so actually I tire as a not not a writer, but just as a general consumer of entertainment, I tire of something that just keeps going. But I know some people love it because it's
Yeah.
familiar.
I used to read a lot of Star Trek novels. I've always been a big Trekkie, and I think the thing about those and about like Harry Potter and a lot of these other series that then do become movies is that it's for the fan base. It's easy. You can sell it to them so easy because they already know all the characters, they know the world, and you're just building on it and telling more stories. So you can jump in a lot quicker. You can pick up a novel, you know all the main characters, and you kind of run with it then. So that's one way. Star Trek is kind of a weird cinematic situation because the movies, they were never like Harry Potter blockbusters. They were never $1 billion. They were, 150 to $300 million movies, but they had a strong fan base. But unlike Star Wars, it has been adding more and more, people to the fan base. Star Trek does not. It kind of, if they're happy if it plateaus and stays the same, but they don't really add a lot more fans. Even the new TV series on CBS All Access, which are fantastic, are really just fan service. They're,
Mm.
the last one, Star Trek Picard, was fantastic for me because I got to see all the characters I knew from the Star Trek shows, and in a new story. So it was easy to get into, but then, you have all this, familiarity. But for people who weren't fans of it, I think it'd be harder for them to get into it. Star Trek Discovery, a little less.
Wait. Because there's so much stuff already, though, like to slog through to get to be caught up, or just
To be
because it's
caught up,
complex.
exactly. To
Yeah.
be, yeah, no, definitely, you don't understand the universe it inhabits yet, and it's such a big universe, the Star Wars, Star Trek universe. So yeah, you would have to really know a lot to understand what was going on. I mean, it was entertaining, and as someone who's a big fan, I can't really say how it would come across to someone who wasn't, but I felt like there was just so much there that you'd be just constantly going, well, what is this and what is that and why are they doing this and who's that person, because it's so built into the canon of the show.
I mean, that's a really good a reason I've never started Doctor Who. I have a lot of friends who love that show. It's been going on so long that it's daunting. I'm like, I don't want to start at the beginning. That's like what, 15, 20 years of shows, you know?
But the funny thing is, it's like 50 years because people like me started back in was it the 90s when they rebooted it on the BBC and kind of generated an entire new audience, especially a huge American audience.
Mhm.
And but there's this whole decades long prequel to that of, another 7 or 8 doctors that existed, before we get to the one that relaunched it back in the 90s. So that's a kind of a unique, um, IP in respect that they did build a whole new audience, and and the audience keeps changing too because the show keeps changing every time. If you're not a fan of Doctor Who, the Doctor is an alien who doesn't die; he regenerates and becomes a different person with all his same memories and stuff. But so you have all these different doctors, and people have their favorite ones. So some people like, certain. There were 3 or 4 seasons with, Matt Smith and with David Tennant and, Peter Sapaldi. I can never say his name right. So each group of episodes that has different doctors has their own fans too. So that's a little bit of a churn. Then some people are like, well, I don't like that one, so I'm not going to watch it. Some people are purists that only watch the old ones that started in black and white.
Oh, wow. I mean, but that's a brilliant concept because you can reference things from the past, but you don't have to because of the concept.
Right. And people can pick it up a little bit easier. They always reiterate, "Oh, this is who this is," because each time the Doctor regenerates, he gets new companions who travel with him, so he gets to re-explain everything to them. So it's a very interesting trope that they have there,
Mhm.
where they can just, oh, and you always wait for those things to hit because there's certain, responses people have to learning all this stuff that's always the same, which is kind of funny. So yeah, it's bigger on the inside. Everyone knows what that means if you're a Doctor Who fan.
So let's go back a little bit because there's actually two interesting points from before that I wanted to touch on. So, first of all, people talk about franchise fatigue, series fatigue. I think a good example, as much as I love the Harry Potter series, which you mentioned, is J.K. Rowling. I loved Harry Potter. I'm not a huge fan of the Fantastic Beasts series, and I know people are kind of, souring on those as well. Again, is it a question of should you have stopped when you were ahead?
Yeah, I totally understand that because I mean, I like the movies, but it felt so distant from Harry Potter that it felt like they were kind of like just riding its coattails as opposed to building on the world. So I understand what you're saying there. Similarly, I'm trying to think of another one that did that. I was thinking more of like when they remake stuff, not because they really want to, but because they have to. Like when they did the Fantastic Four remake, that was a rights thing. Like if they didn't make a movie in a certain amount of time, they'd lose the rights.
I mean, but remakes are a different beast.
Yeah.
We're talking about just continuing on with the same IP forever and ever and ever.
Right.
Which actually
Hmm.
brings up another point. Would I mean, obviously, series of any sort is a cash cow. Like, if you come up with a hit series like Harry Potter, like The Walking Dead, whatever, and you're like, and The Walking Dead has a bazillion offshoots. Well, maybe not a bazillion, but it does have some. So you're like, cool, cash cow. I can just keep going. But then it becomes the only thing you're known for. And is that a bad thing or a good thing?
Well, I think the people who are working on the show are pretty happy about that. But I think writers in general, you see it a lot in turnover as series get older. You get into fourth, fifth seasons. People have locked in their syndication rights and royalties and stuff. That's when they start pitching other shows and wanting to jump to a new show that's fresher because their show they know is gonna at some point end. Most shows 4 seasons is kind of like if you get past two, then you get three and four because of syndication, and then after syndication, it's kind of just how long can they go until the cast becomes too expensive for for them to keep running the show? That's kind of the next fact. But if you run into something like The Simpsons or The Walking Dead, it just keeps going, and they can actually, well, The Walking Dead, they can turn over the cast, they can change the cast in and out, so they can kind of avoid the budgetary issue, and they do the spin-off shows as well. Again, yeah, it's a cash cow. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't stop as long as they still have an audience.
It's interesting. We've talked about this before too, the difference between American writing styles and, for example, say Britain, where American TV, we tend to just write and we have a loose framework, but we don't necessarily know that it's going to end in season 8 or how it's going to end. Whereas in British TV, they basically write it like it's a film, and they know the start, the middle, and the end, and they know, like in season 3, like this is the wrap up and it's done. And I feel like with streaming, we're beginning to see a little bit more of that.
Oh, definitely. Netflix, I think, is notorious for that. I guess in some ways, they've already announced that there was going to be a season three of their reboot of Lost in Space, but it was going to be the last season. So I think people discover things on streaming, over a longer period of time, and then they find out, well, it's already over, it's already been canceled, or it's going to be canceled. So why would I start watching it? It seems odd for them to do that, to upfront say something's going to end, because people like things that go on. I mean, Law and Order has been on forever in multiple incarnations, and as long as you keep making it, people will watch it.
Although, okay, so something like Law and Order, I know it doesn't have the overall arcs as, like, say, Friends or Walking Dead or whatever. I mean, I, as a viewer, I like having a tidy ending. When the series ends, I like I like that they had forethought enough to wrap it up nicely. Like, remember the big backlash with How I Met Your Mother, and everyone's like, "Are you kidding? That was the ending. That's so cheap." Because it was like you kind of thought about the ending, but not really. You sort of let it get away from you. So, I mean, I like that style of writing. For example, with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the showrunners were like, "This is not going to go beyond, I think, 4 or 5 seasons." I'm trying to remember exactly how many years it was on. I want to say 3 or 4, but they knew exactly where they wanted it to end, and it was strong.
Yeah. Well, that I didn't watch that show actually, but yeah, the having a good plan is great. I mean, but I think ending a show is harder than starting one in some ways. You look at how torn people were when Lost ended, and some people liked the ending, some people didn't. Sometimes having a show just be canceled and die, at least you don't have to deal with that. Oh, I liked it or I didn't like the ending. You just kind of like mourn the loss of it, I guess.
You just come up with your own ending. You're happier with
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. One example, actually, Star Trek for the longest time they had a kind of a 7 season arc for all their shows. They kind of knew that it was kind of like how long they were going to last. So Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager all did 7 seasons. The Star Trek Enterprise, the show that came after that, was the first one that didn't. It only did 4 seasons because they just couldn't. It was a prequel actually because it went back before the original series,
Hmm.
and they just couldn't keep it going after four. They got their 4 years for syndication, but they couldn't keep it going beyond that. So not every franchise is a winner all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, obviously, you wanna make money, so you're like, "Hey, if this is bringing in the bucks,
Hmm.
I will write this forever." But I feel from a creativity and artistic side, I wouldn't want to only be known for one property. I would
Yeah.
want to write other things, and prove that I can write, even if it's the same genre, like it's all comedy, to prove that I can write other shows or write other books. And I
Yeah.
think if you can only do the one thing, if you do try to branch out and you fail, your fans get so mad.
Yeah, it's the idea that if you think you can do one more, you probably shouldn't. That's when you should stop. Kind of go out on a high
Mhm.
versus try to squeeze one more out. I think this topic came up because I just watched Angel Has Fallen on Netflix, which is the third movie
Oh, yeah.
in the Fallen series that where Morgan Freeman's the president trying to be assassinated by some whoever it is,
Well, he's not
and
trying to be assassinated.
no, no, I mean someone's trying to assassinate Morgan Freeman, just like Facebook does on a regular basis. He's still alive. Yeah, so in this one, I love the first two they did. It was was it Olympus Has Fallen and then London Has Fallen. Those are great. And then this third one came out and it was oh my god. I mean, there was some good action in it, but every step of the way I knew exactly what was going to happen. Like it was such a retread. They used all the tropes. I knew exactly who the bad guy was, how the good guy was going to fall, how he was going to get back. It was just pointless. It's like if you're going to do another one of something, make sure it's unique. You got to really be unique. And this was, I mean, it wasn't even that it wasn't unique. It was falling back on every single action movie trope and
Mm.
cliche. I don't want to go into spoiler stuff, but yeah, it was it had like one unique scene to it that was really cool. It was the actual assassination attempt was kind of cool.
It's funny, like, that's kind of how I felt about the John Wick series. Like, I loved the first one. The second one, I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, how are they gonna," like, the only reason I watched number 3, I was like, "How are they gonna get out of the corner that they painted themselves into for number 2?" And I liked some of the action scenes, but I was like, "Okay, I think we're good," you know?
Some people felt the other way. They felt two was the letdown and three was the right redemption. So sometimes that happens too.
I mean, I still love number 1. I thought the first one was the
Yeah.
best, you know? But I think
Yeah.
it's because it's the first time you see something like that and you're like, "Oh my gosh." So, like you're saying, when you do a trilogy, you're like, "Okay, more of the same. I've seen this already."
They all were. They all blend together for me. I can't even tell you which one's which. I don't even remember what stories were in each of them. I know there's a dog that gets killed and he's mad about it. I mean,
That's in the
I've seen
first
them
one.
all. Is that the first one? Yeah. So
Yeah.
you killed my dog. Yeah. So what do you guys think? When is enough enough?
Let us know. Tweet it at us at WG Therapy. Find us online at writersgrouptherapy.com. Hope you guys are all doing well, and we will talk to you soon.